Hi there, this is John Kiersted from Arctic Spas, Vancouver Island, with another educational video for you. Today we're going to talk about everything salt. So we've talked and alluded to the various saltwater chlorination systems that we offer on the spas that we carry at our stores. And I kind of wanted to give people an opportunity to see what are the differences and how do the different systems work, right? First of all, on salt in general, there's some electrified plates. They're titanium, ruthenium coated titanium plates, and we run a charge through them, and with the salt in the water it creates electrolysis that takes place, and that's what actually splits the molecule NaCl up. The Cl that's in there, you'll see, we often refer to it as smoking. What's happening is from those plates, when we put the electrical current through there, what happens is these plates start producing chlorine gas. It's very, very minute bubbles of chlorine gas, which instantly dissolve into the water. That is actually what creates our free chlorine, and that's why the system works so well. When that reacts, it goes off and forms another salt after a few reactions, and then it can be reused again, which is really the benefit of having salt, which we've covered in the Why Salt video. So if you haven't seen that one yet, check out the Why Salt video, and that'll tell you why you might want to choose this over other forms of chlorine. But let's just talk about the various ways that we can actually generate chlorine from salt. So this one was actually the first one that we brought in, the Saltron Mini. And I love this little unit. It's inexpensive. The electrodes are a little bit pricey compared to some of the electrodes that you see, like an electrode from Spa Boy or Onsen would be a little bit less money than this. I tell people it's kind of like an inkjet printer compared to a laser printer. You know, you pay more for the laser printer, but each copy is less and the ink is less. With these ones, you pay less for the system, but the electrodes are a little bit more money than they'd be with one of the more expensive systems. That said, for I think it's $6.99, we have the special on for these, where you can have any spa can be converted over. And what's common to all of the ones on the bottom here, all the Control-O-Matic and the Saltron Mini, is that these are designed to stand alone. So you could just plug them in to any standard outlet, and then there's a drape over piece that fits into the spa, and then that piece is what the electrode cell. And that's really as simple as it gets. Literally, you can install a Saltron Mini in just a few minutes. Flip it over, put the salt in the water, put the electrode in the water, and this thing senses. It also knows when it's in the water and when it's out of the water. But the nice thing is it is a compact, universal saltwater chlorination system, and we carry these in all of our stores. We've been having some supply issues, as you know, with COVID and stuff like that. Some things are harder to get than others. We've been having some supply issues with these, but we still do have some in stock, but we have a lot of customers that already have these, and we have plenty of electrodes. So if your electrode fails over time, because it is sacrificial, all of these electrodes on any salt system over time are going to fail. So it's a sacrificial process. We slow that down by using a sacrificial anode, which is basically, it's a piece of zinc that's designed to take priority over the the titanium plates. So it will react with the zinc instead of reacting with those, and that extends the life of these electrodes. That's common on all saltwater chlorination systems, right? This one doesn't measure anything other than the salt content in the water. So it's not giving a feedback loop. So it's similar to a traditional maintenance program where you're gonna have to test with the strip to figure out how much sanitizer do I have in the water, or how much free chlorine do I have in the water. You're gonna have to test it to figure out what's my total alkalinity, what's my pH, right? So you still have that aspect, but what this takes away from the traditional system is you're not constantly adding chlorine to the water. The real benefit to these saltwater generation systems, we're making the chlorine in the water from the salt that's already in there. And the concentrations on all of these, the concentration of salt is much, much lower than people typically think. Most people think this can be like ocean water or seawater. It's much less. It's actually saline. So similar to if you went to the hospital or something and got an IV, it's going to be like that. If you think of your own tears or your sweat that's got that slight saltiness to it, that's about the same level, actually a little bit higher than the salt concentration of the water in the spas. So we put the electrode in, and it starts generating chlorine, and these ones all work on time. So all of these bottom ones work on time. So once it cycles on, the default for a Saltron Mini is 5 hours. It'll come on for 5 hours and then shut off. And it shuts off for 19 hours and then comes back on for 5 hours. Now, if you use your spa more, then you need to increase that amount. Not unlike if you had a tablet dispenser. If you have more people using it, the tablet dispensers open more, or you'd use more chlorine granular or liquid when you get out of the spa. It's going to be related to the usage of the spa. So how often it's being used, how many people are using it, we call it bather load. So the amount of stress put on the spa water as far as contaminants and usage, the more sanitizer you're going to need to deal with that additional what's the word I'm looking for? Additional stress that it's basically happening. So there's more contaminants in the water, more contamination in the water, so we need more sanitizer to deal with that. And it's, keep in mind that the chlorine is a sanitizer, it's also an oxidizer. So it's going to oxidize oils and skin and all the other things that the water might have in it. So Saltron Mini just works on time. It does have, we can calculate from the plates, we can calculate the salinity of the water, or how much salt is in the water, by the amount of current that it draws. It'll tell us how much. So there's an algorithm that's built into the system, and it'll show you with an LED light, low, normal, high, and that tells you that you're in the right range for your salt. And pretty much all of these ones will do that. It's kind of ironic, systems that are used on the Arctics, the Onzen system and the Spaboy system, don't actually measure salinity, but we do measure other things that give us kind of the same information. It's one of the things that I've actually asked them to add in there, because it'd be nice to know, just looking at your app or looking at online, oh, what's the salt concentration? Because sometimes if the salt concentration is lower, then typically you're going to have to run the system more, because I tell people to imagine that you get these salt molecules floating around there and these charged plates, and when the plates are activated, if there's less amount of salt around it, then less is going to be converted to free chlorine. If there's more concentration of salt around it, then more is going to. So it's a time thing. The more concentrated the salt in the water, the faster the production is going to have, that's going to take place. And so what we try to keep it low, because by keeping the amount lower, you extend the life of the cell. Secondly, because people only use the spa for maybe a half hour to an hour a day at most, you have 23.5 hours to recover. So very rarely will you ever need to have the cell on for the full amount of time. You'd have to have very high use to do that. And sometimes that happens on a weekend or something like that, where you may have to, for a short period of time, may have to run it for a longer time so that you produce more sanitizer, or you may have to augment with a little bit of liquid chlorine to make sure that it can keep up with the doubling that bacteria has in the water. That's an important point about all salt systems, is even though we can change the power output to these, there is a limit. So the maximum limit that these have is going to be linear, right? So you're going to be able to put it at the highest setting or amperage output, but at the same time, that's maxed, right? So it's only going to go for a certain amount of time at that maximum amount. So it can only produce a certain amount of sanitizer per minute, per hour. So it's important to understand that. If it gets behind the bacteria's doubling, it can't catch up. And that's the only time that you would then need to add something else to kind of give it a boost. Not unlike with a traditional maintenance program. There are times when you get too much reacted chemical in the water and you have to shock the water. Well, it's the same sort of thing that would happen with the salt system from time to time, although it's quite rare. Like I find that for most people, the regular usage is pretty standard. Like we kind of use our spas the same way all the time. So that was the Saltron Mini. The next one, this is Control-O-Matic. It's a different company. That's made by Solax. This is made by Control-O-Matic. A slightly different looking electrode. This one functions exactly the same as the Mini. So this was what we brought in when we were having some difficulty getting supply on the minis. We brought this in. Works virtually the same way in that it's time-based. Control-O-Matic does things a little bit differently in that they have 10 settings, and there's little LED light indicators on the control box that will tell you which setting it is, and literally it's counting the number of times it flashes. So it's a little, I think that the Saltron Mini is a little simpler than this from a setup point of view, but once you figure it out, it's really not that complicated. The idea is that setting 1 isn't going to be as strong as setting 2 and setting 3 and so on. So if you're using your spa more, you increase the setting. If you're using your spa less, you decrease the setting. And there's up and down arrows that allow you to do that. It's all in the owner's manuals. But that's the most basic system. Now what they've done though that I really like is they introduced this smarter spa. So in this case, they've actually put a sensor on here that's got a patented chlorine detection. So it detects whether or not there's chlorine in the water, and it uses that to determine does it need to come on. And then when it determines the chlorine level is dropped to a certain point and it tells it to come on, it's going to come on one of those 10 settings. So the exact same function as the ChlorMaker, but in this case with the Smarter Spa, it's using the lack of chlorine to trigger it to come on. So the difference is that chlorine detection, when it detects that there's a lower amount of chlorine, then it'll turn on. There's actually a way we can change they call a 0 point. So what the 0 point is the point in which this detects the chlorine level as being low. So I could have that at a lower setting, or I could have that at a higher setting. So it uses, they call the chlorine voltage, which basically it's this chlorine detection that they have. So I can tell it to come on at a higher amount of chlorine in the water, and that's adjustable. So again, that's one of the things that you can adjust. But what's nice about that is that I can say, okay, when it gets a little bit low, I want you to turn on, and I can tell it to turn on from 1 to 10 as a setting for output, which is basically going to tell it how long to come on for and at what power strength to come on for. The higher the number, the more time it will stay on and the more powerfully it'll produce during that time. So that's really the unique thing between this product and the Saltron Mini and the ChlorMaker. It has this built-in chlorine detection, which means it's not going to produce if there's chlorine in the water. And so it's waiting. So if you haven't used your tub for a little while, one of the problems that can happen with these other two versions is that if you set it for say 8 hours a day based on your normal usage, and then you go on holidays and you're not using the thing, then the sanitizer level can build up and build up and build up. And if you get too much sanitizer in the water, then that's going to start oxidizing things and it's going to start causing problems because there's no bacteria in there for it to react with. So it's going to react with whatever else it can react with. So things like the seals, things like some spas have the stainless steel escutcheons and stuff on them, they'll become more vulnerable if you allow that chlorine level to get too high. The same is true with chemicals. In fact, it's one of the most common things that we find with people is they use too much of something and that causes some damage on the spa. So the same thing can happen with the salt system, but with the chlorine detection, then this won't happen, because what happens is it won't detect that the chlorine level is dropped, so it won't come on. The chlorine level has to drop before it's going to engage into another cycle. And that's really the great benefit to this. Now they have another version of this called the Smarter Spa Plus that has an app that allows you to control it and play with it that way. And there's things that you can do. It's a little easier to play with the settings and stuff using the app. Unfortunately, as you know, there's chip shortages and such. So we brought a few of those in, we tested them, we loved it, but we can't get it. So sooner or later we'll be able to get the Smarter Spa Plus again. When we get the Smarter Spa Plus, that's the additional aspect to it is it has that Wi-Fi connection, which allows you to actually interact with the electrode without having to play with the keypad, which is a nice feature. The MegaChlor is actually it can either be like this, the ChlorMaker. It's really just designed for a larger output. So this is designed for a swimming pool or for a swim spa or all-weather pool. You can use this one. So it's just produces at a higher rate, and it can be used for, I think it's up to 17,000 gallons, so a very large body of water. If you use this in a hot tub, it would probably be overkill unless you had the setting very low, and this one does have the ability to have chlorine detection as well. So this one can be ordered with or without chlorine detection. I believe all the ones that we have, you see, have this CD on here. CD means chlorine detection. So we've brought them all in with the chlorine detection because we just don't want people to over chlorinate their water. We want them to have enough chlorination so that it's looked after. Much the same as our overall philosophy, which is we want the least amount of chemicals to maintain safe water, and salt is also one of the chemicals because we're using it to produce the chlorine. So don't ever let anybody tell you that a salt system is not a chlorine system. It is a chlorine system. It's just that the form of chlorine is different. We're using chlorine gas that's been formed from salt, and it's dissolved immediately into the water. So it's much easier to dissolve that in the water than, say, a granular or a tablet, which takes more time to dissolve into the water. So those are the systems that we sell. These are all what we call aftermarket systems. So these can all be put on any spa. We can convert to any spa with them. Some people have some concerns about, well, what's my warranty going to be like? And I will suggest to you that most spa manufacturers and spa dealers, they make a good chunk of their money from the chemical maintenance of the spas. So they're probably going to say, no, if you use one of these, we're going to void your warranty. Even though this is much less harsh on your tub than the chemicals would be. That said, you may want to be careful if you're concerned about maybe something happening with your spa. My suggestion would be to not let them know that you have one of these systems, because they're going to look for a reason maybe not to come out and service you. And that's something to keep in mind. But a lot of the people that get these, their spa is already out of warranty, and this will actually make it so that it's easier to look after their spa. And if you properly maintain your spa, the likelihood of something going wrong with it is far lower than if you're kind of, oh, I forgot, now I have to add a bunch of stuff. Oh, I added too much of that stuff, so I got to add something else. Those are what typically leads to the types of problems that can happen due to the source water and the water chemistry of the water. And the number one reason why warranty is denied is water chemistry. So if the water chemistry is messed up, these make it so it's easier for you to keep your water chemistry in check. Now, let's say that it's one of the systems that we use on the Arctic spas. So in the Arctic spas, it's a little bit more in-depth. With the Arctic spas, the salt systems that we use, like for instance with the Onsen system, which is this black one, 3-plate Onsen system, it's integrated right into the spa's computer. So the spa is running it. So the nice thing about that is that you can actually control your settings and stuff from the keypad of your spa. You can tell it how to come on. You can set different cycles and stuff. It's just a little more advanced. The other thing that separates it from these systems is it doesn't have the electrode hanging over the side. This electrode is in a niche near the bottom of the spa, set up so that it's going to be central to the whole spa, whereas these are kind of hanging over to the side. I don't think that makes a huge difference, but it does make a difference. It looks more like it was meant to be on the spa because it's been integrated into the system. The other thing that is nice about this system is we use a sacrificial anode that's actually built into the drain section of the spa, and there's water in that line, and we actually run a current collector, or actually it's really a ground. It grounds to the rest of the spa pack, so the zinc anodes work better. So those sacrificial anodes work better on this system as opposed to just having a piece of zinc in the water, which is essentially what we do with the other ones for anodes. It's just a more advanced anode. So that is the main difference between this. But this functions very much like the Saltron Mini and the Control Maker in that it's a function of time. So this is there's no detection going on. There's no sensor saying, come on for this amount of time, come on for this amount of time. It's really just the setting. You set it, and then if you use your spa more, you increase your setting. If you use your spa less, you decrease your setting. That's Onsen. Now, the pinnacle of saltwater systems is the Spa-Boy system. So we've alluded to Spa-Boy quite a bit, but the real power of Spa-Boy is in its sensor. It has a very unique sensor. The sensor probe is placed in its own housing, wall fitting on the side of the spa, built right into the spa, and that setting is a medical grade sensor. And what it's detecting is it's detecting the ORP, which is the oxidation reduction potential, which is essentially just measuring how much sanitizer is in the water. So we have that. It also detects pH. So it's going to detect the pH, and that really separates it from the other saltwater systems that we have, saltwater chlorination systems that we have, because being able to detect the pH gives us another bit of information to make it easier for clients to look after their water. You know, we do know that as our pH increases, the chlorine has to work harder. So if we can be notified and see in our app or otherwise that, oh, my pH is too high, lower the pH into that ideal range. So the ideal range is typically 7.2 to 7.6. We say up to 7.8 before we need to actually get it lower. But it's important that you keep the pH below 8 on any of these systems, because if your pH creeps up above 8, then other things can start happening. Not only does the chlorine not work nearly as well, metals can start coming out of solutions as scale, and you get like calcium buildups or other buildups on your jets and stuff like that, on your heating element. We just don't want that to happen. So if you keep that pH low, that information is what really separates Spa-Boy. The other thing that's really cool about it is Spa-Boy is actually directly connected in with your Wi-Fi system. So we literally, on any custom series Arctic spas, whether you have Spa-Boy or not, there's a Wi-Fi card in there that allows it to connect to your home Wi-Fi system. So you can connect to the internet. And what that does is it collects data. So we can collect data on how much time your pumps are working, for instance, how much time your heater's on. And that's actually how we calculate the actual output of electrical use on your spa. So we can tell you exactly how much your spa is drawing, and that way we can, just put in your kilowatt hour, how much do I pay per kilowatt hour, and you can figure it out. But the other thing that does is it's also reporting what the state of the water is. So the state of the water, meaning how much sanitizer is in the water and what's its pH, and that sends that information online as well. So it sends that to the databases at Arctic Spas, and as a dealer, I can access that information. So I can see a customer that has their spa out in the field. I can actually see what the water chemistry of that spa is. And that really, really is an amazing thing. Now, you as a consumer can also see, you can also turn your spa on, turn your spa off. You can, control the lights, the temperature, all of those types of things. But you can also change the output of your Spa-Boy. You could increase Spa-Boy's output from low, medium, high. So if you're using your spa more, you can change its output. It just gives you more flexibility and more information. It also allows us to interact with the spa. So I've had customers where they really don't know what's going on with their spa. We pull it up online, we can see, we can advise them. If they've been struggling with some challenges with their spa, we can say, oh, well, your pH has crept up a little bit, and that makes it harder for the chlorine to do its job. So lower your pH down, your ORP will be in check, and all of a sudden everything will be back to normal. So it just gives us that little bit extra automation. I mean, the next step for Spa-Boy will be to actually automate the pH adjustment as well. Right now, we can only automate the chlorine adjustment. So similar to the chlorine detection on this, the same thing happens with that probe. The probe in a Spa-Boy system is also detecting how much sanitizer is in the water and telling this to come on. And it actually will say, oh, it's quite low, and it will actually adjust the output of Spa-Boy as well. So if the level is quite low, it will turn Spa-Boy on to its maximum output. So it's producing as much sanitizer as it can per minute. But if it notices it's only a little bit down, it will actually run at a lower setting, because that's, again, is going to preserve the life of the electrodes. These cells are sacrificial. This is kind of like a Brita filter, or the filter in your spa. From time to time, you're going to need to change these, and it's very much related to how much you use it. We tell people 6 to 18 months. I have many customers that have had these over 3 years. I have some customers that in 4 months, theirs gets used up because they're in their spa all the time. The more this has to work, the more wear that's going to take place, and the sooner you're going to need to replace the cartridge. And we always recommend that clients have another cartridge on hand to do that. But that's really the big difference between these. Now, one other feature that I didn't mention on the Control-O-Matic, the Control-O-Matics also have a boost feature. So what the boost feature does is you press the boost button, and regardless of the chlorine detection or otherwise, when you hit boost, it's going to come on. So I've been telling people for years with SpaBoy, because SpaBoy also has a boost feature, when you get in your spa and when you get out of your spa, initiate the boost cycle. With the boost cycle, what it's going to do is it's going to turn on SpaBoy or turn on Control-O-Matic for one full setting. Right? Now, SpaBoy is just going to come on, I believe it's for 30 minutes it comes on. It's going to come on at its highest output. And the reason why we want to do this every time you get in the spa and every time you get out of the spa is because that's when we're introducing the most contamination to the water. So if you treat the water with sanitizer right when the contaminants have been introduced, they don't get a chance to replicate, right? So you don't get a whole bunch. If you contaminate the spa and it takes a little while for SpaBoy to recognize, oh, wait a sec, the sanitizer level's been used here, now I'm going to turn on. The bacteria and contaminants that feed the bacteria have already done some of their work, and so you got more of the contamination in the water. So SpaBoy has to work a little bit longer. If you get into the habit of when you get in the spa, hitting the button, and when you get out of the spa, hitting the button, then the bacteria never gets that chance to replicate. With these ones, it'll automatically initiate settings. So you only really need to hit the boost button on these ones when you first get in, because it will initiate whatever setting you have. So if you have this set for setting number 3, it's going to come on for a period of time and then shut off. And then it will just go and wait until the sanitizer level has dropped again. So it says, oh, there's not enough chlorine in here, and then it'll turn on and just go back to revert to its normal cycle. The nice thing though is that with each of these systems, there's some advantages and disadvantages. Obviously, SpaBoy is the most advanced system, so it's the most expensive. The Smarter Spa is going to really become our standard aftermarket offering, because it has all of the advantages of the Saltron Mini, but having that chlorine detection so that we never over-chlorinate the water, I think is critically important. So that's a kind of a long-winded explanation of all the different salt systems. There's other salt systems out there, and if you have a specific salt system you'd like me to review, please send us, ping us, send us a question about it, and I will review the different salt systems, but they all basically work in the same way. You're always going to have a replaceable cell that needs to be replaced. They're all going to have a base amount of salt that you need to have in the water that becomes the source of chlorine for looking after the spa. I'm John Kierstead from Arctic Spas Vancouver Island. Thank you for listening to this video.